The gift that was an insult. The great hall of the alien palace was alive with light and sound. Tall crystal columns glowed with a soft blue light, and strange banners hung from the ceiling. The air smelled of rare flowers and burning incense. Dozens of alien nobles stood in a wide circle. Their clothes were covered in silver and gold. Their faces were proud, and their voices were full of laughter. In the center of the room stood the alien baron, a tall, thin figure with pale skin and eyes like cold glass. His voice carried across the hall as he spoke in the alien tongue. "This," the baron said, "is my gift to the human captain." The crowd turned, curious. A small hover chair rolled forward. On it sat a young alien girl. Her legs were still. Her hands rested quietly on her lap. Her skin had a faint glow, and her dark eyes watched everything around her. She looked calm, but there was something hidden in her gaze. The baron smiled, but it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who thought he was clever. "She is my daughter," he said, "but she cannot walk, she cannot fight. She is useless to my house. Let her be a companion to the human. Perhaps she will make him laugh." The nobles burst into laughter. Their voices echoed through the hall. Some whispered insults about humans being too soft. Others joked that the captain now had another burden to carry. Captain Daniel stood at the edge of the circle. His uniform was plain compared to the rich alien robes, but he stood tall. His dark eyes stayed fixed on the girl, not the baron. He didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. In that moment, Daniel understood. This was not a gift. It was an insult. The baron wanted to show the galaxy that humans could be humiliated. He wanted to prove that humans were nothing more than servants in the great alien empire. Daniel walked forward. His boots clicked on the marble floor. The nobles quieted, waiting for his reaction. Some expected him to refuse. Others hoped he would lose his temper. He stopped in front of the girl. She looked up at him. Her face showed no fear. Her eyes were sharp, as if she was studying him just as much as he was studying her. Daniel knelt, so he was at her level. "What's your name?" he asked softly. The girl's lips moved slowly. Her voice was calm but clear. "Lyra." Daniel nodded once. "All right, Lyra, let's go." Gasps and whispers filled the air. No one expected him to accept her without question, but Daniel didn't care about their shock. He turned the hover chair around and began to leave. The baron called out behind him, "Enjoy your new prize, Captain." Daniel didn't look back. His mind was already working. This girl was more than what they thought. He didn't see weakness. He saw eyes that were alive with intelligence. He saw someone who had been watching, listening, and learning. As they moved through the palace corridors, Lyra finally spoke again. "You should have refused me," she said quietly. "That is what they wanted. That is what would have made them laugh the most." Daniel gave her a small smile. "I don't do what they want," he replied. Lyra studied him for a moment. Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes softened. She looked away, staring at the alien city outside the tall windows. "They gave me to you as a joke," she said. "But you don't seem angry." "I'm not angry," Daniel said. "I'm curious." They reached the landing pad where Daniel's starship, the Silver Dawn, waited. The ship was small compared to the massive alien cruisers in the sky, but it was fast, reliable, and entirely human-made. The crew was waiting at the ramp. Their faces showed confusion and even suspicion as they saw the girl. One of the crew, a tall man named Reeve, stepped forward. "Captain, what's this?" Daniel looked at his crew. "This is Lyra. She's coming with us." Reeve frowned. "But why?" Daniel's voice became firm. "She's part of the crew now. That's all you need to know." The crew exchanged glances, but no one argued. Daniel led Lyra inside the ship. The doors closed behind them with a hiss. As the Silver Dawn lifted off, Lyra sat silently, watching the alien palace grow smaller in the distance. The stars began to fill the windows, and the hum of the ship's engines filled the air. In the quiet, Daniel spoke again. "Lyra, you're not here because I want to pity you. You're here because I think you have something they can't see." Lyra turned to face him. "And what's that?" Daniel leaned back in his seat. "Potential." Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if she was testing him. But somewhere deep inside, a small spark lit up. A spark that would one day burn bright enough to change the galaxy the Baron had meant. To give an insult, but Daniel had just accepted the greatest gift he would ever receive. Asterisk, the journey begins, the silver dawn cut through the blackness of space. Her engines glowing faint blue as she left the alien world behind. Inside, the crew went about their work, some at the controls, some in the engine bay, and some keeping watch in the observation deck. But there was something new in the air. Today, a quiet tension. Lyra sat in her hover chair in the main corridor. The chair hummed softly, gliding forward as she explored the narrow passageways. The ship smelled faintly of oil and metal. Unlike the perfumed halls of her father's palace, here, everything felt alive and busy. She noticed crew members glancing at her as she passed. Some were curious, others wary. A few didn't even try to hide their confusion. Daniel walked beside her, his hands behind his back. He didn't speak much, but he watched her closely. "We'll reach human space in 3 days," he said. "Until then, you'll have a room near the observation deck." Lyra's voice was calm. "Is this where you keep your trophies?" Daniel gave a faint smile. "No, it's where we keep our guests." She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "You think I am a guest?" "I think," Daniel said, "that you are not what they think you are." They stopped in front of a small cabin. The door slid open. Inside was a simple bed, a desk, and a round window that looked out into the stars. Lyra moved her chair to the window and stared for a long time. Daniel waited, giving her space. Finally, she spoke. "You could have left me there. That would have been easier for you." "Easier," Daniel said, "is not the same as right." Lyra turned her gaze from the stars to his face. Her eyes were unreadable. "You don't even know me." "Not yet," Daniel replied. "But I will." The next hours passed in quiet observation. Lyra watched the crew from her window, noting how they worked together. She noticed who was in charge when Daniel was busy, who argued the most, and who stayed silent but always listened. That evening, Daniel brought her to the mess hall. It was a long, narrow room with tables fixed to the floor. The crew was all ready. Eating when they arrived, all conversations stopped. "This is Lyra," Daniel announced. "She will be traveling with us. Treat her with the same respect you give each other." There were nods, but also lingering glances. Reeve, the tall crewman from before, sat at the far end. He looked at Lyra for a long moment before returning to his food. Lyra did not speak much during the meal. She listened, she memorized faces and names. She heard jokes, complaints about engine noise, and whispered talk about the alien empire. Every detail was stored away. When the meal ended, Daniel walked her back to her cabin. "They're not sure about you yet," he said, "but give them time." Lyra's tone was quiet but firm. "I am not here to make them like me." Daniel stopped, studying her. "Then why do you think you're here?" She hesitated, looking toward the stars outside her window. "To survive," she said at last, "and maybe to win." The next day, the ship passed near the edge of a nebula. Its clouds glowed in shades of violet and blue. Daniel stood at the observation deck, and Lyra joined him. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Daniel said. "Yes," Lyra replied. "But dangerous. The gases can hide ships. Ambushes happen here." Daniel turned his head toward her. "You've traveled this way before." She nodded slightly. "My father's fleets often use the nebulas. Edge to hide. If you pass too close, you might not see them until it's too late." Before Daniel could respond, the comms officer's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, we're picking up faint readings." Could be nothing, but they're moving fast. Daniel's voice sharpened. Raise shields, slow to half speed. Keep scanning. Lyra moved her chair closer to the control panel. They'll try to flank you from the far side of the cloud, she said. If you shift course now, you can make them chase you into open space where you have the advantage. Daniel hesitated only for a second before giving the order. The ship adjusted course, swinging wide around the nebula. Moments later, 2 alien fighter craft broke from the cloud, realizing they had lost the element of surprise. The Silver Dawn outran them, slipping into the safety of deep space. The crew murmured in relief. Several glanced at Lyra with new eyes. When they were alone again, Daniel said, "You saved us time and maybe lives." Lyra shrugged. "I told you, I am not useless." That night, as the ship hummed softly in the dark, Daniel found himself thinking about her words. She was still a mystery, a paralyzed alien girl given as a cruel joke. Yet she carried herself with quiet strength. She was not afraid of speaking up, not afraid of being wrong. He knew then that Lyra was more than a passenger. And though he didn't yet understand her full value, he could feel the truth pressing at the edges of his mind. She might be the key to something far bigger than either of them, far away in the depths of the alien empire. The Baron sat in his grand hall, sipping dark wine. He had heard the report that his gift had left the planet. He smiled to himself, certain that the human would soon see her as nothing but a burden. But the galaxy had a way of proving people wrong, and for the first time in her life, Lyra was moving toward a future her father could not control. The hidden mind, the Silver Dawn, sailed through the black ocean of space, her engines humming like a steady heartbeat inside. The crew had returned to their normal routines, checking systems, running drills, and plotting their course toward human space. But for Captain Daniel, things were no longer normal. Since the incident near the nebula, Lyra had been on his mind. Her warning had saved them, and she had spoken with the calm certainty of someone who had seen far more than she let on. The observation deck. Daniel found her again in the observation deck, staring out at the stars as if they were old friends. Her hover chair was silent, her hands folded neatly on her lap. She didn't turn when he entered. But she spoke, her voice steady. "You're heading for Terra Prime, aren't you?" Daniel paused. "That's right. Your people will welcome me," she asked, still looking at the stars. He walked over and leaned against the window frame. "Some will, some won't. Humans can be suspicious of outsiders." Lyra's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Suspicious is better than cruel." Daniel studied her profile. "You've been watching us, the crew, the way we work." "Yes," she admitted, "and I've been listening. You keep your engines at 80% capacity, not full. You take indirect routes to avoid high-traffic systems. Your crew trusts you. But they also question your orders in private." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You've been here less than 3 days, and you've noticed all that?" Her dark eyes turned to meet his. "I notice everything." The first revelator that day, Daniel brought her to the navigation room. The crew members there were mapping a new course through a cluster of unmarked systems. One of them muttered about unknown patrols in the area. Lyra looked at the map and said quietly, "That system is a trap." Everyone froze. "What do you mean?" Daniel asked. She pointed at a cluster of 3 suns on the display. "Here, here, and here. The Empire uses those as relay points. They can move ships between them faster than most scanners can detect. If you pass through here, you'll be shadowed without knowing." The navigator frowned. "That's not in any records we have." "It wouldn't be," Lyra said. "My father made sure of it." Daniel leaned closer. "How do you know this?" She hesitated for a moment, then spoke. "Because I grew up in those war rooms. Listening to my father's generals, I know more about the Empire's patrols, supply chains, and fleet movements than most of its commanders." A heavy silence filled the room. The weight of knowledge that evening, Daniel invited her to his quarters. On the desk was a holomap of known and unknown space. "You're telling me you have inside knowledge of the Empire's military?" he asked. Lyra met his gaze without flinching. "I'm telling you, I can predict their moves before they make them." Daniel tapped the map. "If this is true, you could save lives." "A lot of lives," her voice hardened. "Or I could doom them if I choose wrong." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then why tell me?" She looked away, her expression distant. "Because I've seen what they do to people like you. People like me. My father would burn your worlds to ash if it meant proving his power." Daniel studied her for a long time. "And you?" She turned her gaze back to him. "I want him to lose." Testing the mind the next day, Daniel decided to test her. He called the crew into the strategy room and laid out a fictional scenario: an alien raiding fleet moving toward a human trade. Root Lyra listened quietly, then began giving orders to the holographic markers, repositioning them with precision within minutes. She had created a strategy that would not only defend the route, but also cut off the raiders' escape. The crew exchanged glances, impressed and uneasy at the same time. Reeve muttered under his breath, "She's dangerous." Daniel heard it. But he didn't correct him, because it was true. The warning that night, Daniel found Lyra in her cabin. The lights dim, she was reading from a small data slate, the alien script glowing softly. "You've been quiet," Daniel said. "I've been thinking," Lyra replied. "Your crew doesn't trust me yet. They think I'm dangerous." Daniel crossed his arms. "Are you?" She set the slate down, her expression calm. "To my father, yes. To you, that depends on whether you listen to me." Daniel smirked faintly. "I'm listening." She leaned forward slightly. "When we reach human space, the Empire will try to intercept us. They will not let me slip away so easily. You'll need to be ready for them before they even know you're ready." A captain's choice. As Daniel left her cabin, he felt the weight of her words. She was not just a passenger, not just a political insult. She was a living, breathing vault of enemy secrets. Keeping her safe could change the course of the conflict between humans and the Empire. But it also meant painting a massive target on his ship, his crew, and himself. In the dark, far from her father's reach, Lyra stared out at the stars. She had not told Daniel everything. Not yet. There were things in her mind that could destroy not just her father's empire, but the fragile balance of the galaxy itself. And she wasn't sure if Daniel was ready to hear them. The first test, the Silver Dawn, had been traveling through quiet space for almost 2 days. The crew had settled into their normal rhythm: maintenance checks, meal rotations, and long hours staring at blinking control panels. But quiet never lasted long in the galaxy. It started with a faint beeping on the long-range scanner. The officer on watch leaned forward, frowning. "Captain, I've got movement." Several contacts, fast approach. Daniel stepped to the console. "Show me." The screen lit up with red dots closing in from the far right side of the display. They were spread out, moving like a pack of hunters. "Who are they?" Daniel asked. The officer shook his head. "Not transmitting any IDs. Could be pirates. Could be worse." The trap. Lyra rolled into the bridge in her hover chair, her gaze going straight to the scanner display. She studied the formation for only a few seconds before speaking. "Not pirates," she said quietly. "Empire scouts." Reeve turned sharply. "How can you tell?" "They're moving in a 3-point arc," Lyra replied. "It's a hunting pattern my father's ships use before a blockade. If you wait too long, the rest of the fleet will arrive." Daniel didn't hesitate. "Options." Lyra's voice was calm but urgent. "Turn toward the asteroid belt to our left. They'll expect you to run for open space. That's where the trap is. The belt will block their scanners, but you'll have to move fast." A crew divided. Reeve shook his head. "Captain, with all due respect, we don't even know if she's telling the truth. We could get trapped in there." Daniel looked at the crew. "We've got minutes, not hours. Make your choice." There was a tense pause. Then Daniel turned to the helm. "Do it. Take us into the belt." The Silver Dawn banked hard to port, her engines roaring as she accelerated. Toward the jagged field of rock and ice, the scouts changed direction immediately, giving chase. Through the belt, the asteroid belt, was a graveyard of shattered moons, massive chunks of rock spinning slowly in the void. The Silver Dawn weaved between them, her hull scraping dangerously close to jagged edges. Every bump made the crew flinch. "There." Still behind us, the comms officer called. "Two ships closing in fast." Lyra rolled her chair toward the secondary console, her hands moving over the controls. Daniel shot her a glance. "What are you doing?" "Changing our signal signature," she said. "If I can make them think we're just another chunk of debris, we might slip away." Close call. The ship jerked violently as a blast from the pursuing scouts grazed the aft shields, warning alarms. Filled the bridge, red lights flashing overhead, shields at 60%. Reeve shouted. Lyra didn't look up, her focus locked on the console. 10 more seconds. Daniel's jaw tightened. "We don't have 10 seconds. 5. Then, she said calmly, "Hold them off for 5. Daniel barked. "Weapons return fire. Target the lead scout." The Silver Dawn's cannons roared to life. Streams of energy lancing through the void. The lead scout swerved, buying them precious moments. The vanished Lyra hit the final command on the console, and the Silver Dawn's external readings shifted on enemy scanners. The ship's energy signature dimmed until it looked no different from the countless rocks drifting in the belt. "They've lost us," Lyra said, her voice steady. The bridge went silent except for the faint hum of the engines. The red dots on the scanner slowed, scanning wildly. Then, one by one, they peeled away, disappearing back toward open space. The crew exhaled in relief. Changing opinions, Reeve turned toward Lyra, his face unreadable. "That was impressive." Lyra gave him a small nod. "I told you, I am not useless." Daniel stepped closer to her chair. "You just saved this ship." She shrugged slightly. "Your people think fast, but they think like prey. You need to start thinking like hunters." Daniel almost smiled. "Maybe you should teach us." Unseen thread, as the ship cleared the belt and resumed its course. Daniel stood by the window, watching the stars. Lyra joined him, her hover chair silent. "They'll send more," she said softly. "Scouts don't just disappear without reporting. The Empire will know I'm with you soon." "If they don't already," Daniel turned toward her, "then we'll be ready for them." She looked at him for a long moment, as if weighing his words, then returned her gaze to the stars, far away, deep in alien space. A coded message was being sent to the Baron. It carried 2 simple words. "She lives. A new bond in the mess hall later." The crew gathered for a late meal for the first time since she'd come aboard. Lyra sat at the same table as the rest of them. Some still kept their distance, but others leaned in to hear her speak. She told no grand stories, only short, sharp observations about the Empire. Even the most skeptical crew members listened. Daniel watched from across the room. She was changing. The ship already. Whether they trusted her fully or not, they couldn't deny her value that night. Daniel entered his log. Lyra proved herself today under real fire. The crew is starting to see her as more than a passenger I can't ignore. The truth, she is a weapon, not of steel, but of the mind, and the Empire will stop at nothing to take her back. The turning point, the Silver Dawn slipped into the quiet lanes of human-controlled space, her engines humming in steady rhythm. From the outside, she looked like any other mid-range exploration vessel. But inside, the atmosphere had changed. Lyra was no longer just the silent passenger in the hover chair. She had become a voice the crew now listened to, sometimes reluctantly, but always with attention. The nebula incident and the asteroid belt escape had left a mark on everyone. They knew her mind was sharp, dangerous even, and in space. Dangerous could mean survival. News spreads by the time they reached the trade station at Vera's Edge. The story had already traveled faster than they had. Merchants whispered about a crippled alien princess aboard a human ship. Dock workers spoke of a captain who had stolen a valuable prize from the alien baron himself. Some versions painted Daniel as a thief, others as a hero, as the Silver Dawn docked. Daniel stood on the bridge, arms crossed. "Looks like we've been busy without even knowing it," he said, watching the streams of station chatter scroll across the comms feed. Lyra rolled up beside him, glancing at the screen. "The Empire? We'll hear these rumors. They'll know I'm alive." Daniel gave her a small nod. "They probably already do. A message from the shadows that night. A private transmission came through. Marked with no official code but carrying the seal of the human colonial fleet, Daniel opened it in his quarters. A stern-faced admiral appeared. Her voice low and clipped. "Captain Daniel, intelligence confirms the Empire is mobilizing ships. In your sector, reports suggest they're searching for an escaped political figure. We have reason to believe that figure is aboard your vessel." Daniel kept his expression neutral. "And if she is?" The admiral leaned closer to the screen. "Then you have a choice. Hand her over and avoid conflict. Or prepare for a fight that could drag the entire frontier into war." Before Daniel could answer, the transmission ended. The crew learns the truth. The next morning, Daniel called the crew together. The mess hall was crowded, the low hum of voices cutting off as he began to speak. "The rumors are true," he said. "The Empire is looking for Lyra, and they're not going to stop. We can hand her over and walk away. Or we stand with her and face what comes." A ripple of unease moved through the crew. Reeve spoke first. "Captain, why risk all of us for her?" Before Daniel could answer, Lyra moved her chair forward, her voice cutting through the silence. "Because if you hand me over, it won't end there," she said. "The Empire will take your ship, your crew, and make an example of you. They want to prove that humans can be broken. I won't let them." Her words hung in the air. No one spoke for a long moment, then one of the younger crew members muttered, "I'd rather go down fighting." Others nodded slowly. The tension turning into something heavier. Determination, the Baron's fury far away. In the cold halls of his palace, the alien Baron stood before a massive holographic map of the galaxy. Reports scrolled past his eyes, sightings of a human ship, whispers of his daughter giving tactical aid to humans. Each line of text was like fuel on a fire. "She dares," he murmured, his voice a dangerous whisper. One of his generals stepped forward. "Orders, my lord." The Baron's eyes hardened. "Send the hunters, send the interceptors. Bring me my daughter, alive. And kill anyone who stands in the way." Shifting loyalties over the next few days, the Silver Dawn avoided major routes. Relying on Lyra's knowledge to navigate back channels and hidden corridors of space, more than once, her advice kept them out of the Empire's grasp. With each narrow escape, the crew's trust in her grew. Reeve, once her loudest critic, began asking her for input on ship defenses. The navigator consulted her before plotting courses. Even the engineers started seeking her advice on how to counter alien scanning technology. Lyra didn't smile often. But Daniel noticed the change, a softer edge to her words. A quiet pride in her posture. She was no longer just surviving. She was leading, the choice one evening. Daniel found her in the observation deck, the stars reflected in her eyes. "They're going to come for you harder now," he said. "Your father isn't the type to give up." Lyra's voice was steady. "Then we don't give him the chance. We strike first." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Strike? The Empire?" "Not the whole Empire," she said, "but a key piece of it, a listening post near the rim. It feeds information straight to my father. Without it, he'll be blind in this sector. Daniel considered it. That's not just defense, that's war. Lyra turned to face him fully. It's already war, Captain. You just haven't accepted it yet. The turning point that night, Daniel gathered his officers. Lyra laid out a plan, bold, risky, and impossible without absolute trust. They would infiltrate the listening post, plant false data, and vanish before the Empire knew what happened if they succeeded. The Silver Dawn would gain precious time to move freely. If they failed, they wouldn't have a chance to fail twice. The crew listened in silence, the weight of the decision pressing down on them. When Lyra finished, Daniel looked around the room. You know the risks. You also know what's at stake. I need to hear it. Are we in this together? One by one, they answered, yes. The last to speak was Reeve, his voice firm. We're with you, Captain. And with her, from that moment, the course of the Silver Dawn changed. They were no longer running. They were choosing to fight. Far beyond the edges of human space, the Baron's fleets moved like a tightening noose. But in the cold dark between the stars, a human ship and a paralyzed alien girl were about to pull the first thread that could unravel an empire. The big Wartha Silver Dawn drifted at the edge of a silent asteroid field, her lights dimmed from the outside. She looked like just another chunk of space debris. Inside, the crew moved quietly. Every voice low, every step measured. They were only hours away from Lyra's target, the Empire's listening post on the rim. Lyra sat at the strategy table in the command room, her hoverchair surrounded by glowing holomaps. She pointed at a rotating image of the station, a massive, dark structure shaped like a claw gripping a cluster of relays. Once we breach the outer defenses, she said, you'll have less than 9 minutes before the patrols realize something's wrong. Reeve leaned over the map, and in that time, we're supposed to plant false intel, fry their comms, and escape. Lyra's eyes were steady. Yes, the crew's resolve. Daniel scanned the faces around the table. These were people who had followed him into danger before, smugglers, former soldiers, engineers who'd built their lives on the edge of law. But now, they weren't just risking themselves. They were risking the future of humanity's fragile place in the galaxy. No one's forcing you to do this, Daniel said. If anyone wants out, speak now. The room stayed silent. Even the newest recruit, a young sensor tech, barely 20, kept his gaze fixed and his voice steady. We're in, Lyra gave a small nod. Then we move at 0400, approaching the beast hours later. The Silver Dawn crept out from the asteroid shadow. The listening post loomed ahead, a fortress of black metal, bristling with antennae and defense turrets. It hung in the void like a predator waiting for prey. Shields to minimum, Daniel ordered. Keep our signature cold. Lyra leaned forward in her chair. Guys, locked on the station. This place isn't built for ground assaults, she murmured. They expect attacks from the outside. Which is why we're going inside. The infiltration, the ship's stealth shuttle, detached, carrying Daniel, Lyra, Reeve, and 2 engineers toward the maintenance bay of the listening post. They drifted in the shadow of the station until the docking clamps latched silently. Inside, the air was cold and smelled faintly of ozone. The corridors were dim, lit by thin strips of pale light running along the floor. Every sound, the hiss of a door, the click of boots on metal, seemed too loud. Lyra guided them through. With quiet precision, left here, she whispered. Camera blind spot, 2 seconds. They moved like shadows, slipping past patrolling guards and scanning drones. Daniel couldn't help but notice, for someone who had grown up in luxury, Lyra moved with the instincts of a soldier. Planting the data, they reached the control core. A tall chamber filled with pulsing blue conduits and a central column of swirling light. This is it, one of the engineers said, unpacking a small black case. Inside was the device Lyra had designed, a sleek module that would insert false navigational data into the Empire's central military network. The moment it activated, entire fleets would be sent chasing ghosts across the wrong sectors. Reeve stood guard by the door while Daniel and Lyra watched the engineers work. Time ticked down to 8 minutes. 7 minutes. The alarm at 4 minutes in. A low klaxon echoed through the station. They've detected the shuttle's signature. Reeve shouted, "Finish the upload." Daniel barked, his voice cutting through the rising noise. Lyra's eyes flicked to the upper gantry, where 2 armored guards had appeared with rifles raised. She slammed her hand on a control panel, triggering a blast door between them, buying a few precious seconds. Escape under fire. The device beeped upload, complete. Daniel grabbed it. Move. They tore through the corridors, alarms blaring now at full volume. Security drones descended from the ceiling, their weapons tracking. Reeve's rifle flashed. Dropping 2 of them, they dove into the maintenance bay, only to find a squad of soldiers waiting down. Daniel yelled, pushing Lyra's chair behind a stack of crates as the first volley of fire scorched the air. One of the engineers tossed a flash charge, blinding the squad long enough for them to sprint to the shuttle. The hatch slammed shut. Engines roaring to life, the chase the shuttle blasted free of the station. But 2 interceptor ships were already in pursuit. They're faster than us. The pilot yelled, Lyra's voice cut through the panic. Take us toward the debris field, now. Daniel didn't question her. They plunged into the cloud of shattered ships and old station wreckage, weaving between jagged hulls and drifting metal. The interceptors followed, but not for long. A sudden explosion rippled through the field as Lyra triggered an old mine from the debris. One interceptor vanished in a fireball. The other veered away in panic. Victory and realization. The shuttle docked back with the Silver Dawn, and the crew erupted in cheers. Daniel stood on the bridge, catching his breath. Report. The comms officer grinned. Empire fleet movements are going crazy. They're chasing phantom coordinates all over the sector. Lyra allowed herself the smallest smile. That buys us at least 2 weeks. Reeve leaned against the wall, shaking his head. You know, I'm starting to believe you really can outthink the Empire. Daniel looked at Lyra. Not just outthink them. Maybe beat them. The Baron's response far away. In his palace, the Baron received the news. A listening post compromised, fleets misdirected, and whispers of his daughter's involvement. His calm shattered. She dares to strike at me. He roared, his voice echoing off the cold stone walls. To his generals, he gave a single command. Find her ship, destroy it, and bring me her heart. The Silver Dawn had won its first real battle against the Empire, but the war was just beginning. And in the dark between the stars, the Baron's hunters were already moving. Humanity's greatest alive, the Silver Dawn, was quiet. It's not the peaceful kind of quiet. This was the heavy silence before a storm. Every crew member knew the Empire would be coming. Lyra's strike against the listening post had been bold, too. Bold to go unanswered, Daniel stood in the command room, his hands resting on the holotable. The latest reports showed patrols tightening in nearby sectors. The Baron wasn't hiding his anger anymore. The noose was closing. The warning Lyra entered, her hoverchair gliding silently. They'll find us soon, she said, without preamble. Not because they're clever, but because my father is furious. He'll throw ships at us until one gets lucky. Daniel looked at her. Then, what's your move? Her dark eyes met his. We don't run this time. We end it. The room went still. Reeve frowned. End it. You mean take down a Baron's fleet? With one ship? Lyra shook her head. Not his fleet, his will. If we break him in front of his own people, the Empire's hold will weaken. The bait her plan was risky, almost insane. They would send a false signal, letting the Empire know exactly where they were. But instead of running, they would hide near a small, abandoned moon rich with metallic, or the moon's surface would mask the Silver Dawn's energy signature. When the Baron arrived to capture her himself, they would strike. Why would he come in person? Daniel asked. Lyra's voice was quiet but certain, because I'm his shame and his pride. He can't stand the idea of anyone else having me. The arrival 3 days later, the trap was set. The Silver Dawn sat in the moon's shadow. Her engines cold, every light on the ship was dimmed. The crew waited, tension thick in the air. Then they saw it, a massive warship sliding into orbit. Black and gold, bristling with weapons. The Baron's personal flagship, the Dagger of Dawn. Lyra's hands gripped the arms of her chair. "It's him," she whispered. "The strike the..." Plan unfolded fast. A small decoy drone, fitted with Lyra's voice on a repeating message, broadcast from the far side of the moon. As the Baron's ship turned to pursue it, the Silver Dawn powered up, weapons locked, shields raised, fire. Daniel ordered. The first volley hit the Baron's engines, shaking the massive ship. It wasn't enough to destroy it, but it was enough to enrage him. The cums crackled to life, and the Baron's voice filled the bridge. "Daughter, you will kneel before me, or you will die with these creatures." Lyra's voice was calm as she replied, "No, father. I will stand with them." The battle, the space between the moon and the Baron's ship, erupted with fire. The Silver Dawn darted and weaved, using the moon's craters for cover. The Baron's guns roared, lighting the void with streaks of energy. Reeve called out, "Shields at 40%. Daniel kept his focus. "Hold the line." Lyra fed targeting coordinates to the weapons officer, predicting the Baron's maneuvers before he made them. She knew his tactics, his pride, his weaknesses. Every order she gave chipped away at his advantage. The turning momenta critical hit rocked the Baron's flagship. One of its primary weapons exploded in a burst of light. The crew of the Silver Dawn cheered, but Lyra's expression stayed cold. "Don't celebrate yet," she warned. "He's about to do something reckless." And he did. The Baron turned his massive warship straight toward them, preparing for a ramming strike. Daniel's eyes widened. "He's going to crush us." Lyra cut him off. "Not if we blind him. Aim for the forward sensors. Now." The Silver Dawn fired, a perfect shot shattering the flagship's viewing array. The Baron's ship swerved violently, scraping against the moon's surface. The final blow, smoke and fire spilled from the Baron's hull. Lyra turned to Daniel. Her voice steady now. "Captain, send the message." Daniel activated the comms, broadcasting across open channels: human, alien, neutral. It was Lyra's voice that carried through the galaxy. "I am Lyra of the House Varen. My father gave me away as a joke, but today I stand as an ally of humanity to any who would call humans weak. Look at this day and remember." The transmission ended. The Baron's crippled ship limped away. He had lost the battle, and, far worse, he had lost face before the galaxy. Aftermath: the Silver Dawn returned to human space to a welcome they had never expected. News networks called Lyra the princess who defied an empire. Fleet officers sent messages of respect to Daniel. Merchants, smugglers, and diplomats alike began speaking of an alliance that could rival the Empire's power for the crew. Life aboard the ship went on, but it was different now. When Lyra rolled through the corridors, no one saw her as a burden. She was a leader, a strategist, and a symbol. Humanity's greatest ally. One quiet evening, Daniel found her again in the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before them. "You've changed a lot of lives," Daniel said, "including mine." Lyra's voice was softer than he had ever heard it. "And you changed mine, Captain. You saw something in me when no one else did." Daniel smiled faintly. "I saw the truth. You're not just an ally to humanity. You're one of us now." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The Silver Dawn sailed on into the dark. And somewhere out there, the Baron plotted his revenge. But for now, humanity had a new friend, and perhaps its greatest hope.